Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Charmed. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I love this continued storied arc of what we're getting of fake news in the magical world. That the Tallyman is able to cut and make and put things out there in the world to make it seem like, oh man, the Charmed Ones don't care. While all that stuff was going, while we're in danger and suffering from the Tallyman, what are the Charmed Ones doing? They're at a spa. And it turns out Donnie worked at the spa, and I think he was actually there that episode too, wasn't he? I think so. Which was last episode, I believe. That actor who plays Donnie most recently, CW-wise, was obviously like a recurring character throughout iZombie. Wasn't his character name? Was he Stu or was the other one Stu? I don't remember now. Because Stu was kind of like the goth dude, wasn't it? Or was he? I don't remember now. Either way, Donnie is submitting himself constantly, watching these videos and these recordings all the time about, man, the Charmed Ones suck. They're not here for us. Do we really know the Charmed Ones? How do we let such powerful beings exist? Like, why do we rely on them so much? What about this other Charmed One? Because once again, rumors were already spreading about Kayla, about like, oh, is she even a Charmed One? Are they even really sisters? It's like, man, the fake news. Obviously, I'm sure it's a commentary just like the real world, but it's just like, yeah, creating whatever narrative fits what you need. And that's what the Tallyman is doing. Like, because he himself, we know, has no actual magical powers. So he's fighting power with technology. And it just like shows you how powerful technology can be. When you're able to craft a narrative to be whatever you want to, I think that's such an ingenious and interesting aspect, because I referenced it before. I think it's an interesting twist on once again, I love how this show remixes storylines from the OG series and pays like homage in that regard, but the entire magical world turned against the Charmed Ones like in the final season. And it's like, oh, you weren't really there for us because you're so caught up in yourself, which I get where the magical world came from, but I also got like, right, we've been doing this for so long, putting our lives on the line, like we just kind of want something for ourselves. So there's that, but now it's like, it's not even like they're jeering their responsibilities. It's because they lost their sister. It seems like only those who are well-versed in the know, like people know like, okay, there's a new Charmed One, yeah, but they don't know about, I think only a few people know about Macy. I like the ins and outs, like, right, Macy died. Everyone else outside of it is like, oh, people just know about the Charmed Ones tangentially and just like, oh, the Charmed Ones, yeah, sure, we know about their existence. And I think the Tallyman is using that to his benefit of, for those who never seen, it's like, right, the Charmed Ones weren't there to help me. It's like, they're not all powerful where they can be everywhere at all times. They're only 3 people. Yes, they are some of the most powerful people in the world, but they're not omniscient. And I think that's what the Tallyman's going to use against him. Oh, were you in danger and the Charmed Ones are supposed to be this great protector, but they weren't there for you? I'm surprised he hasn't used anything with Maggie, which could always come back up, but I mean, he did, like Maggie's rage and her almost killing the Lamia, but he makes it seem like she killed the Lamia. Same thing for Frank. It's like, oh. And I'm surprised, I mean, I guess considering the circumstances, Jordan didn't say anything, but he was there. Granted, he's dealing with everything too. He wants to get away from the Charmed Ones. Specifically, he needs space away from Maggie. They probably haven't been around each other recently. She has kind of worked through things a little bit, but it's still a process. It's not like she's completely fine, so they didn't show anything in the episode, but I'm assuming like Jordan probably did his thing and then bounced immediately, so. And there's even people knowing he has connections to the Charmed Ones. I guess it's just not public enough knowledge, unless you probably like have some like magical insight, in the sense of like having magic that lets you get some insight into people. Like the people he was playing cards with, like there's those 2 ladies who are like, oh, like you're having trouble, love life with one of the Charmed Ones, ha ha ha. And he was like, yeah, like let's not mention the Witches 3. And then, lo and behold, they end up showing up there, which I love that whole, like, the moment they heard the toothbrush and everything, I was like, that's not a toothbrush. Don't go in, okay? Maggie, you went in there, cool. You caught Kayla masturbating. I think that's so interesting, like, Mel was so blasé about it, being like, oh, like, you're normally, like, you know, not so, like, stuffy about it. She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, it's because it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, people masturbate. It's like, you're okay? Like, have they walked in on each other masturbating before? Like, they're so blasé about that. I'd be weird. I mean, Maggie feels like she walked in on a stranger because she's like, right, using the S word, sister, is a little too soon, and she's not quite there yet. But so I'm like, oh, she was a sister and make it okay? I mean, because she was like, yeah, why are you being so awkward about it? Why is walking in on someone masturbating not awkward? Regardless, I feel better walking in on a stranger masturbating than I would a family member. Jesus Christ, but hey, I guess it's also like, right, it's just, hey, it's just a natural process. People do it, like, why deny it? Like, it's not that weird, and why get so weird and awkward about it? But I just thought that was such an interesting thing. So, time frame wise, it seems like Harry's been going a week, because they wanted to ask him about the Tally-Man. And him being a gnome and making this stuff, because Maggie was looking through, like, the books and trying to find anything about it, but can't. So either he resurrected some ancient technology and has modernized it to use it in a certain way, because we learned at the spa, like, gnomes are technology, but they have a connection with machinery. So either this is some ancient technology which he resurrected, which a small part of my brain is like, maybe that could be it. But another part of me is like, no, it's probably just he's good with machines and he's compensating for the lack of magic that he has. And so I think that's so interesting, because I feel like dwarves really get the spotlight for being like the makers, but they're usually like blacksmiths. It's kind of how dwarves are typically portrayed in most fantasy stuff. I feel like there's only one other thing I can think of that utilizes gnomes in that, right? It's like they're not actual gnomes, but it's their title. And I guess mythology-wise, gnomes have kind of always been that kind of a like dwarves, where it's like they're known for their craftsmanship. I've never really heard that before, like playing a video game, and it was like, yeah, like this group is known as the gnomes, and they make stuff. Like they have pretty advanced technology that most people wouldn't have access to. And they're an ancient group and stuff like that. So, like, it's stuff, that video game is, like, the only instance I've ever really seen, or, I mean, maybe I just haven't come across enough stuff related to gnomes to have that come up other than this in said video game. But, regardless, tangents aside, they show up at the Blue Camellia to find, Harry, but it turns out, in fact, they have Johnny who's waiting for him, and he's got, like, these gloves that basically he claps his hands, boom, everyone dies. You activate magic around him, boom, everyone dies. So, gotta figure out what to do about that. And so, Mel's been practicing her time travel. It's like, cool. It's like, wait, what have you been time traveling? A turkey sandwich. That's okay. It's like, don't worry, I got you guys. I'm going to send you back 10 minutes. Because it's time travel, it never goes the way you want to. Because time travel can get wonky, especially when you have to rely on ability you've only just been tinkering with a little bit. And she accidentally sends them back to the 20s. Cool. And I even love Roxy being like, nope. You're going to sit here and do nothing and just be the distraction, because I'm not going to let you potentially cause more havoc. So I need you to, you're not coming up with any more plans. And going back in time, they, Kayla and Maggie are trying to blend in as they're waiting for Roxy to come back. Because it's like, right, Roxy lives for a very long time, so we can make it so that she gives the message to Mel on where we are 96 years from now. Like, will that work? I don't know. This time travel stuff, it makes my head hurts. It's like, yeah, that's typically how most people's reaction to time travel stuff is like. Because you never know what the time travel rules are. Like, so many different things and mediums use time travel a little differently. Some come up with their own time travel rules, whatever the case may be. I think that's fascinating. But I do like that time travel segment got Maggie and Kayla to bond a little bit more, especially because, obviously because of the sister angle, obviously it made singing that song together, which I'm like, dude, I always love like renditions and just, I was just, that sound, that like them singing together, I was like, it sounds so good, and that's so awesome. But regardless, they both talk about not really knowing a lot of their own heritages, because obviously, like, for Maggie, it's like, right, I'm black and Puerto Rican, but I never really knew that black side of myself, because growing up, my parents are Puerto Rican, so it's like, that's all I've ever really known. And even Kayla, it's like, yeah, her her parents are for Ghana, and it's like, yeah, they raised her like that, but then it's like, yeah, she's like, at 12, they're like, oh, yeah, this actually kind of, yeah, there's actually, yeah, we're not your parents, and also, we're not your biological parents, plus there's also this other, so, like, there's a side of ourselves, and they both can kind of, you know, neither one really got to know, like, all of who they were, because, I mean, Maggie never got to know her biological dad. Obviously, you know, he died, so before she ever really got a chance to know him. And Kayla knew nothing, and still currently, even with the end of the episode, has a better understanding, but it's still like I have no idea who my bio parents really are. So I think that kind of like, that combined with them singing together and having each other's back, it gave them like some necessary bonding time to really feel that vibe and connection. So I thought it was interesting with the whole Lady C thing. I didn't know what to expect from that, and then it's like, I also thought it was interesting because I was like, oh yeah, like she's kind of, and she ended up being a muse. I was like, hey, muses getting a spotlight recently, aren't they? Because obviously Cleo from Legacies, so I thought that was fascinating. But I was thinking like the singer that Kayla met the other day, last episode. I thought like maybe there was kind of maybe some connection there. It's like, well, it makes sense like from a magical standpoint of like, yeah, you'd want someone who has this enchanting element to their art, their performance. And then lo and behold, who shows up? The Vitra. Not just any Vitra. I guess this is still before any of her other species, after the rest of her species are dead, because she's like the last one. So I guess that's why she's here even 96 years ago. So it's like, cool. You wouldn't just run into one. It'd be the one you will eventually run into later. And I love that Kayla ended up cutting off one of Seymour's arms. Like, I'll cut off another one. I'll see you in 96 years, bitch. I'm like, yeah. Because it turns out that Lady C, or Camellia, uses her dance. She enjoys to dance, but the problem is she is a muse, and I guess her muse isn't just always like, her muse isn't just an inspiration thing. It makes people go a little nutty. Like, people like turn into like essentially horn dogs around her. It's very similar to I recently referenced her from Misfits, Alicia. Her power, where basically like her touch makes anyone immediately want her. So it's almost like a poison ivy / siren thing she kind of has going on, but it's more with her dance moves. So she doesn't have to directly touch you, but her magic will influence you like that as a muse. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But it's like, yeah, when you have that type of thing and what it can do, you know, but she doesn't want to leave the stage because she's like, right, it's a place to be able to perform my art and do what I love. Yes, it has that drawback, but even Kayla's kind of going through that. That's why she was like, yeah, I kind of had to rub one out because I have all this built up energy because I'm not drawing anything, because I'm afraid if I draw something, I might summon a dragon that burns down Seattle. So obviously, but Camellia had talked about that she didn't want to be without her art, because it's like what her life would be without that stage and being able to perform what she does. So I think that in turn made it, I mean, they both end up finding a solution, because the Vitra ended up dropping these magical cuffs that block magic. So Lady C has one and Kayla has another, so she can draw whenever she wants to without worrying about her manifestation abilities. And even Kayla realizing that the drawing that she was so fascinated inside of the Camellia in present day, realizing like, oh, I'm the one that drew it. And it's like, oh, that's some time travel stuff. I guess like she's like, it looks so familiar to me. I guess because she every artist has their own feel and style and kind of signature. And I guess she immediately, it's like, why does that look so familiar? It's like, oh, because it's something I drew. I just didn't realize it. But it's like, that's why it seems so familiar to her. Funny how that stuff works, but it's like, right, that's why that date was in Mel's head, because she had just looked at the painting, which that date was written across it, and now that part ends up being a plan of like, back in the 20s, they have all these paintings and stuff like that, like trying to get a message across, and I could even have an alarm set up to go off like 96 years later, so that Mel knows where to get us, but I thought it was interesting the moment earlier on. Now it kind of sparked why Roxy ended up acting the way she did when Mel had used that perfume, and it's like why she was so protective of it. It's her wife's perfume, Camellia. So it's interesting because it's like, right, 96 years ago she was attacked by a Vitra, but it was these two strangers because Roxy wasn't there to recognize them. So, well, she would have seen them and then recognized them 96 years later. But now it's like, no. So it's like, oh, once again, just the full circle of like, right, you are always meant to go back in time and help save Camellia all those years ago. But it's also sweet knowing like that's why the place is named what it is. You named it after your wife. It seems like she's not around. We don't know the circumstances, but it could be a thing of she probably, well, because she's a muse, so she's not the same species as Roxy, so she eventually aged and died. Because that's what at first I was like, oh, whatever happened to your wife? It's like, oh, she probably just, yeah, she has a normal well, a relatively generally, like she has pretty much probably a human's like lifespan, so she ended up dying. So I was like, oh, that's because I was thinking like, oh, was there a bigger reason why she's not around anymore? It's like, oh, and that's also why she covers it. Not just because like, oh, she died. It's like, no, she aged, she got old and died. That's different. Like, it's just the sad, why she bonded with Harry. It's like, right, the trouble of being this borderline immortal being where it's like, does seem like she could still end up dying because later on when she got a claw, she's like one of the claws pierced her. She's like, don't worry, it missed my heart. So I'm like, are you like a vampire? If your heart gets pierced, just no wooden stake. Like as long as maybe if you get decapitated or maybe if her body sustains enough damage, that's also the thing. I always confuse it. Immortality does not always equate invulnerability. Just because you're immortal doesn't mean, because vampires have like somewhat indestructibility except for the stake to the heart and getting decapitated. Typically you'll recover from any wound, right? But I'm like, not most a lot of immortality doesn't work that way. You just won't age and die. Time will just keep going on, but sustain enough damage and you will eventually die is kind of the whole point. So it's like, yeah, that shot to the heart would have killed her. Because Mel had suggested, like, right, for Donnie to have been able to come in here because he's not that smart, even messing with the candles, which that's rough. That poor bastard, whoever it was that Roxy blew out their candle trying to get Donnie out, ended up killing someone because whoever ends up trying to leave ends up dying. I was like, that's super rough. But, yeah, Mel was like, right, there had to be an insider, and it turned out being, like, her bartender, Sonny, which is like, oh, I kind of wasn't expecting that. The moment she got shot with the claw, I was like, what? I was like, were you trying to hit Donnie or something? It's like, oh no, you're the insider. In fact, you're the one that he's been talking to. They both want to see a future where the Charmed Ones, I'm like, that's also the thing, like, what have the Charmed Ones done to you? But I guess it's like, right, you're just rallying around the fact is, we put so much stock in the Charmed Ones, but they're not special. We shouldn't be putting them on such a pedestal. We shouldn't allow such powerful beings to do whatever they want to, because they're not here for the people. They're selfish, and they're doing what they want to. It was interesting, though, that the reason why Roxy, like, stepped up and didn't leave it to Mel is because it's like, no. Like, that perfume, you had to wear that perfume, and the last, like, it reminds me of my wife, and she got attacked, and I wasn't here for her, and, like, I wasn't going to let that happen again. Someone else, it's like, so if you hadn't worn that perfume, you wouldn't have sparked that in me. And the moment that happened, and even when they were hiding together, they were looking at each other, I was like, oh, is there something going on there? And even I was like, another sister's going to have a complicated relationship with a semi-immortal being, because obviously the whole Harry and Macy thing, I'm like, oh, that's going to be complicated, and I don't even know if Roxy would be down. I mean, the heart wants what the heart wants, but it's going to complicate things when it's like, yeah, when you live for a very, very long time. I mean, and Roxy she definitely has, like, Abigail vibes, which I always thought, like, I was like, Abigail and, Mel would have always made an interesting couple. I was kind of almost rooting for that because I don't think I thought of that. I think someone had commented that once, and I was like, yeah, I could definitely see that being a thing. I don't think that was just me. I think I commented on it before, like in reviews about like, oh, how I think they would make an interesting pair, but I don't think I'm the one that put that idea. I don't think that came from me. I think that was in response to someone else's comment about it. I don't remember now, but luckily, the situation resolved popped Kayla and Maggie back to present day, which is also, once again, just like, that is a very unique time travel ability. Now we have better context for understanding it, that she doesn't peer into, like, I thought, like, oh, you I guess she can, if she wanted to, she could time travel her conscious, or at least I thought it was like, oh, your time, like, I made reference to the show Travelers. Like, I thought she was time traveling her consciousness like that, which she kind of is, but it's more so like she has like her eyes peer through time. So she's able to get a view through a certain point in time. It's almost like she's a corporeal version of herself, sending herself back in time. And the moment she touches something in that time frame, she brings it back with her present day. So it's almost like a combination of Travelers, time traveler like your consciousness, meets Yo-Yo from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Her power, her OG power of snapping back to her original position. It's like a combination of the two, which I think is so fascinating. I'm saying that a lot. Well, interesting and fascinating, but still, like, so that, once again, very unique, I think, take on like a time travel power. But, you know, but now the Charmed Ones are now more aware of what incited people like Donnie. It's like, because the magical world doesn't know what we went through. It's like, yeah, you might think you took off a 6-month hiatus. It's like, yeah, because we were going through something. We lost, like, but then some people would probably still, like, have a grudge against you. It's like, well, no matter what, I mean, you weren't the Charmed Ones anymore because you lost your sister, so there's that. But also, it's like, it doesn't take away the fact is that you weren't there for us. You should have still been, like, I don't know if that will help. The whole general thought is, right, if we take down the Tally Man, then we could get our story out there. Like, without him around here spreading the propaganda and fueling these literal and figurative trolls. They are literal trolls spewing trollish stuff, so once again, like, the information highway, especially, you know, obviously real world first and in the show, like, right, once that's out there, like, the narrative it's becoming a beast of its own. Once again, why the Tallyman feels the need to do this, did the Charmed Ones not help him at one point in time, and he wants to say, screw you guys. Once again, there's that memory of his that Mel is like, why was this a good memory for you? Who knows? Once again, I think maybe when Mel wasn't looking, he ended up killing his brother in that memory, and that's what makes it a good memory. I don't know. Mel only got like a little taste of that memory, so there's no telling like what she fully saw in it. There's no full context for that memory to understand why that's a happy memory. But also, like, once again, why does he have beef with the Charmed Ones? My previous thought was, is he just doing that simply because he wants to prove that he's better than them? If I can take down the most powerful beings in the magical world, the Charmed Ones, then it just shows how special I am, trying to feel like he's more than what other people said he is, whether it's his brother, his own family. Maybe they always put him down and now he wants to feel superior to someone else, to everyone else. I don't know. I'd reference the Roxy thing being interesting because she's not just an ally you can 100% count on. It seems like she has her own thing that she's doing, because Harry does pop back finally, and it's like, cool, you've been going for like over a week, and he's like, what did you do to me? And she's just smirking him like, that seems sinister. But maybe it's like I'm helping you in the long run, but maybe in the end, it's also, you're going to be benefiting me for whatever purpose. But like I said, it also definitely seemed like a potential her and Mel thing too, which that's why I definitely got Abigail vibes in that regard of like, yeah, she doesn't seem like all bad, but it seems like there's good there, but it also seemed like she has a mischievous side, and we just don't know what she has planned, because she didn't let the Charmed Ones know, yeah, I sent Harry off somewhere. It's just like, no, I haven't seen Harry, because she knew, it's like, I knew you guys would come looking eventually, but also I no one comes into this bar, let alone sneezes, without me knowing like what's what. So she definitely didn't let them know about, yeah, Harry and his whole circumstances, that she kind of told him to kind of take something and that sent him off somewhere, so we don't know where. I also love before when where was it? Like earlier in the episode when Mel time traveled Kayla and Maggie's like, oh my god, I sent them to the wrong time. Where did I send them? It's like, did I send them here? I forgot the places he referenced, and then Roxy was like the 80s, and then Mel was like, oh god, I'm like, oh, that's where you draw the line, anywhere in time. And it's like finding out, oh, I might have sent them to the 80s. Oh god, the 80s. Oh no, the humanity, how not the 80s. Like, I love that. I just thought that was such an interesting bit. Like, get shit on the 80s, I guess. I mean, God, every decade has some terrible stuff associated with it. So, but I just thought that was so interesting. But continuing the Roxy thing, because I didn't talk about it, but Mel did run into Ruby, which the shelter that she was running got shut down, so they're making a temporary place at Safe Space, and it's like, yeah, we want to help out. Oh, and me and Swan are dating. It's like, hey, we haven't seen Swan in a while. I was like, hey, because I don't know if we really I don't think they ever really went into the ins and outs about like the aftermath of everything with Macy and everything. But it's like, hey, Swan. And it's like, yeah, your appearance just to be like, yeah, me and Ruby are dating. It's like, ooh, that's awkward. But even Mel is like, the problem is, like, I never thought about it. She's like, but honestly, they are very compatible. And it's like, oh, they make actually a cute couple. And so obviously it's like, Mel's only just kind of dealing with everything between her and Ruby. And Ruby was like, I wanted to tell you, because they've been dating for a couple months, but it's like, the time never came about. But at the end of the day, Mel still helps out, because it's like, right, things are a little awkward, but at the end of the day, I am really happy for you and Swan, because I think you guys are really good together. And it's also like, oh, is that someone else's perfume? Are you dating Mel? And it's like, I don't know. She has, we'll see. So we'll see how that whole her and Roxy thing ultimately ends up playing out. But then the final thing we get in the episode is them using a means to find out who Kayla's parents are, and they use it to get a picture of who they are, which that actor, I'm like, hey, most recent thing I saw you in was maybe Van Helsing might be the most recent thing. I don't know. I feel like there might have been something more recent I saw that actor in. But regardless, the moment I was like, oh, and they're like, and Kayla's like, right, are these your parents? And they're like, no, we've never seen these people before. So Kayla's like, who the hell are they? And like, who the hell am I? So that's why I'm like, I figured she probably won't end up being a sister, even though Maggie was like, no, I felt something there. Like, yeah, we had a sisterly moment. So, I also appreciate just like a little thing I just kept noticing this episode. I like that Kayla says dude a lot. That's kind of my like, not like I like, oh, copyright that, but it's like, I don't know. I like when a character's just like, dude. It's fine. Like, I don't know why. I don't know. Just, I guess it kind of adds to like almost like that artistic laissez-faire aspect to Kayla's character. Like her just like, that's how she refers to people. Just like, Anon, like, dude, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. I just connect it for whatever reason on mine. It's a little thing, but I just thought that was interesting. But I never thought like they would do the sister storyline again. Once again, they already started off with the half sister storyline, so I was like, I doubt you're going to double down on that. I figured it'd be something else. I'm like, I guess it could. They still felt like there's some relation here. Like, are we like cousins or something? Like with Josefina, or like there's some family connection, familial connection. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's going to be the interesting element to, it's the big question in the magical world. Who is Kayla and what is her connection to the Charmed Ones? Yes, she's a Charmed One, but what is this connection? Like, all the Charmed Ones in the past have always been siblings, so why is it that in this case they're not? What makes Kayla so special? That's going to be the really interesting mystery of this season, figuring out her circumstances. So I'm very excited to ultimately see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.